Alrighty, let's do it live, as some may say. So I am going to try and get back into BookTube, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and just rank all the books that I've read so far this year, from January to June. And I'm going to try and go in order if I can recall what I read first. I should probably pull up my Goodreads just to make sure I'm going in order, but I am going to rank these by, as you can tell here, not sure if my mouse is showing, but mind blowing is obviously holy crap, like mind blowing. A new favorite is obviously a new favorite, something that I really, really, really enjoyed. But it's basically a 5-star read or close enough, but it wasn't like holy crap mind blowing. Glad I read it is something that I didn't necessarily find as a new favorite, but I really enjoyed it for what it was. Ambivalent or indifferent, as the title suggests, is I was either conflicted about it or I just really didn't care. Didn't work for me is the story or the novel didn't work for me, but I can see its appeal to others and for others. An abomination is a work that I absolutely hated, despised, wanted to throw in the trash, and I think should have never been published. Although that's probably been a bit dramatic. But anywho, let us get started. And the first book that I read, if I can pull this up, was The Summer That Melted Everything. And if I can not pull this up. Oh, there we go. I don't know how this stuff works. So The Summer That Melted Everything. I was so excited about this book because the premise it seemed amazing. So this is a story that is about a young boy who meets another boy who is supposedly the devil, and it takes place in Breathitt, Ohio. It's like a Midwest Gothic, I guess if you want to call it that. Um, and it started off being really great, in that the writing style was really kind of engaging. It was very poetic, but it very quickly turned to just absolutely being pretentious. It was so repetitive. I was every single chapter was a repeat in regards to like tension and setup as the previous chapter, and by the end of it it turned into like this incredibly like rate I don't want to say racist, but like that's the only thing it was it was a lot of othering of people that were not white or not, able-bodied, and it was so bad. I immediately unhauled it after I read it because I was just so angry at it. So with that, it's definitely an abomination. The next one that I read was Traitor's Blade, the first book in the Greatcoat series by Sebastian de Castell. I don't think I mentioned it before, but The Summer That Melted Everything was by Tiffany McDaniel. She also wrote Betty, which I had bought before I finished The Summer That Melted Everything, but I also unhauled that because I was like, I did not get along with her writing style. Anywho, Traitor's Blade, first book in the Greatcoat series. I, for the majority of it, I could see why people liked it, and I thought I was gonna be ambivalent, indifferent, or that it just didn't work for me. But the combination of me just being frustrated with the main character and the entire, I feel like, lack of plot, and the writing itself, combining that with a certain chapter I absolutely wound up despising it. So it's an abomination for me. And the reason for that is the writing itself. Sebastian de Castell does a really good job of writing action scenes, and I absolutely commend him for that. But the plots in between just weren't engaging. They weren't. I felt like there was nothing. It was just filler between one action scene to the next. So and that just does that's not why I read books. So yeah. What was the next book that I read? Or next book that I finished? Okay, yeah, next books that I finished was Dracula by Bram Stoker. So this is obviously a classic, and I I read a lot of I don't read a lot of classics. I say that I do, but I really don't if you look at the numbers. But I'm familiar enough with classics that I can, work through whatever writing style differences there are, the kind of classical language used and the more classical style of writing. So I was actually really surprised by Dracula in that it was very atmospheric. It felt very modern. The pacing was really great. The narrative structure, which is told through an epistolary kind of journalistic style, was great. And that's what really kept the pacing going. So, uh, Dracula, in case you didn't know, is about Dracula. It's a vampire novel. So, what more can I say? So I'm going to put it as a new favorite. The next one that I read was Zombie Sharks with Metal Teeth by Stephen Graham Jones. And this was the first short story collection that I had read by Stephen Graham Jones. And I had no idea what to make of it at first with those first few stories. But the more that I got into it, the more that I read, the more that I loved it. Um, they're not all standouts, there are some hits and misses, but there is a really just Stephen Graham Jones has a really good grasp on his storytelling, and it's very intentional. Um, and if you like weird horror, if you like weird fiction and just kind of off the wall type premises, and even to some extent kind of sci-fi elements as well, I think you would like this. But I would say I don't start Stephen Graham Jones with this short story collection. I don't think it would be a good start if you've never read any Stephen Graham Jones before. With that said, I'm gonna put it as a new favorite because let's face it, it's Stephen Graham Jones. So yeah. So in December, I had reread The Bear and the Nightingale. So I continued on and I read The Girl in the Tower. This was for the Winter Night Trilogy read along that I was hosting. And of course, like, I love the Winter Night Trilogy. It's my favorite series of all time, and I absolutely adore it. I read the entire trilogy, twice in less than 12 months, and it was The Girl in the Tower was even more wonderful on reread, and I just, it has my heart. So, all right, so another short story collection, The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. This was my first experience with Ken Liu's writing. This is a story collection that I buddy read with Angela from Literature Science Alliance and Abby from Abby Salter. And this may alternatively compared to Zombie Sharks with Metal Teeth, The Paper Menagerie made me realize that a short story collection can be read or can be written and every single one of them be a hit. This is emotionally evocative, emotionally draining, and intentionally so, and so incredibly thought provoking. And so wonderful. If I absolutely had to pick a favorite story out of the bunch, I would have to say it's Good Hunting. So, I would not recommend watching the Netflix adaptation, on Love, Death, and Robots, but if you're really into it, I guess, yeah, that's fine. So I'm gonna put it here in mind blowing. Can I sort these out? Oh, I can. Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely. I loved Kindle. All right, the next one that I read was another Stephen Graham Jones, and that was 3 Miles Past. This is a novella collection of 3 novellas. I really, really liked it. It wasn't, I feel like I will need to reread it again to get a better understanding. I appreciated all 3 novellas. The first novella was incredibly disgusting. Um, but would I put it as a new favorite or glad that I read it? Because technically I rated it, I think, 4 stars. Maybe I rated it 5, I don't know. But as time has passed, like, where would I put that? Um, I'll put it as glad I read it because, yeah, yeah, glad I read it. Okay. All right, the next one that I read was the third book in the Winter Night trilogy, Winter of the Witch, and it is an absolutely wonderful conclusion to the Winter Night trilogy. I Oh god, it's just, again, so good. Um I have live show discussions on my channel that where we talk about each book in the trilogy if you've read them before, so definitely check those out. But yeah, I absolutely, oh god, I love it so much. Anywho, next one that I read was The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. And this was very much a surprise for me. I had been forewarned that maybe I wouldn't connect with it as well because of the thematic subject matter, with it being very magical realism based and based in Latin American culture and communities. Um, but I loved it. I wound up really, really, really liking it. I loved Zoraida Cordova's writing style, and it made me very much interested in the rest of her writing. So, what The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina is about is that it is about a woman, Orquídea Divina, who uh, summons all of her family right before she dies to say, "Hey, I'm gonna die. Come get your inheritance." And it kind of goes from there. But what I really, really like about this story and this novel is that there are these kind of dual timelines where it follows a kind of present day with Orquídea Divina's um, uh, children and grandchildren, as well as a past view of Orquídea Divina when she was a child and growing up. So I really, really liked it. I would put it above Frankenstein. So really, really liked it. All right. Oh dear God, I'm so sorry. Whatever, chaos, it's fine. The next book that I read was The Vanished Birds. And I read this as part of the 12 books that I need to read as recommended by 12 people. And this was recommended to me by Nick from Wicked Good Books. And I this was absolutely an experience. It was beautiful, it was gorgeous. It was just it was incredible. I don't know why I switched there, but yeah. So it's yeah, it was top of mind blowing. It was the way that Simon Jimenez tells his stories, I don't think are gonna work for everybody, but it absolutely, I feel like The Vanished Birds is incredibly underrated. It is a sci-fi space opera in title and in intent, but I feel like it's so much more than that. It starts off as like this folkloric tale because you're pretty much in this kind of small community, and then you don't know where you're going. because you're on this planet, you're dealing with this kind of small community, more agrarian society, and it takes a while for you to actually get into the space opera, the space of this opera. And one of the things that I really, really love about this novel is that Simon Jimenez takes space and opera and utilizes each of those words within that term so beautifully. You almost feel the music as it's being written, or how do I explain? You almost feel the music through the writing, and it's so good. I loved it. Obviously it was wonderful, wonderful to read, and it was his debut. So I was so excited to read more of his works whenever he came out with them. So we will get to that in a little bit later. But the next book that I read was Night Shift by Stephen King. This is a short story collection. I think it was his first short story collection. I read it as a read along on Jake from the Bookish Drummer, his Discord. I've never had the greatest experience with Stephen King. Like, I read Misery and I appreciated it for what it was, but I didn't really like it at all. And these short stories, I feel like they didn't really I didn't connect with anything. Maybe one or two out of the 20 plus did I even remotely enjoy, but the majority of them I didn't really like. I just don't really connect with Stephen King's writing, so I'm gonna put ambivalent indifferent about it. The next book that I read was The Hidden Girl and Other Stories by Ken Liu. I could not wait to read this collection after finishing The Paper Menagerie because I became obsessed with Ken Liu, and it was glorious and fantastic. And The Hidden Girls is something that is definitely different from The Paper Menagerie. It feels much more personal, but it also is much more cohesive because it's more sci-fi focused than The Paper Menagerie, which has like sci-fi but also like more fantasy in it. And it's just I really, really, really enjoyed The Hidden Girl. Um it was absolutely incredible. So I would put it up here. Yeah, I would put it right here. Definitely absolutely fantastic. So the next one that I read was Sterling City by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a novella about a man who is a farmer and he finds something on his farm. The thing about this novella is that the cover makes it look like it's a young adult novella. I don't know why I got that from the cover. And from the back, maybe I didn't read it that much, but, like, I didn't realize it was more sci-fi focused. So I really didn't like it initially. I actually originally gave it, like, a 3.5 star. But I wound up reading another Stephen Graham Jones work later that made me kind of rethink and reframed my thoughts on Sterling City. So it's more of like a Lovecraftian-esque type sci-fi, if that's even a term. But yeah, so I wound up enjoying it more in hindsight. So I will just go ahead and put that I'm glad that I read it. All right. And then the next book that I read was The Fall of Hyperion. I read Hyperion last September or October. So I finally got to Fall of Hyperion. I buddy read this with Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and I think technically Alan was gonna read it with us, but I don't think he ever finished it or even started. Sorry, Alan. But I hated this book for the majority of the book. I felt like it was going nowhere. Mind you, I loved Hyperion. I gave Hyperion 5 stars. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I loved the absolute structure of it, and I think it stands well on its own. With The Fall of Hyperion, you don't get that same kind of structure to the story, which is makes sense. Like you're not going to repeat the same thing you did before. But I felt like I wasn't connecting with this book nearly as much as Hyperion. And I was just getting really frustrated with the lack of perceived plot. It felt like it was meandering and also all over the place. And I wound up switching to an audiobook to kind of help push me through because when I'm not feeling something, it's hard for me to get the motivation to continue. But I wound up getting an audiobook for this, and that really helped with my motivation as well as, obviously getting through the story. And by the end of it, I absolutely I I I loved it. It wasn't an all-time favorite, but it was I just loved the way that Dan Simmons brought everything together from Hyperion to The Fall of Hyperion and kind of tied everything up. So glad that I read it. I know it's above Stephen Graham Jones. Don't be surprised. But anywho, next one that I read was Scythe. This is the first book in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy by Neal Shusterman. This is a young adult dystopian novel. I read this as what was supposed to be a read-along that I totally gave up on. But I really, really liked Scythe. I haven't read a lot of YA, so this was a pleasant surprise that I enjoyed it. So I'm really, really glad that I read it. I would say, yeah, right. Really, really glad I read it. Almost a new favorite. So in case you don't know what Scythe is, so it is based in this dystopian world where no one can die. And so to control the population, they have these figures named scythes who kill to control the population. I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory, but anywho. The next one that I read was The Girl Who Drank the Moon. And I read this as a buddy read with Stacy. Stacy McCaskill-Elijah, I think is her channel name. I'll definitely link everybody's channels down below who I buddy read anything with, or if these books were part of any read-alongs or what have you. And I absolutely adored this. This is a middle grade novel. I had never really read any middle grade, actually, yeah, I hadn't read any middle grades as an adult, and I absolutely adored this. This is a middle grade that I feel like is for any age, and it's so emotional. As an adult reader, I was surprised with how much depth and complexity there was to this story. So what this story follows, or who this story follows, is obviously a little girl who drank the moon, but there is so much more to it than this girl. It has more perspectives. It follows a young man who is dealing with living in this society that gives up their children and to this witch because they feel like there's this yearly sacrifice that must be done to kind of satisfy the surroundings. And just the way that Kelly Barnhill kind of weaves everything together. With it being a middle grade, I took it slowly because I felt like it needed to be taken slowly. And I just absolutely adored it. It was definitely mind-blowing for me. I would put it there. Yeah, I would put it there. Just because, The Girl in the Tower is a reread, and I feel like The Girl Who Drank the Moon was absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, obviously, if it's mind-blowing, I think they're all fantastic, but okay. Let's get through this because I don't want to take forever. All right, the next one that I read was The Backbone of the World by Stephen Graham Jones. This was a story as published in the Trespass collection, exclusively on Amazon. And this is the story that I read that gave me that context and that that kind of revision of Sterling City. So, The Backbone of the World follows this woman who is dealing with her husband being incarcerated, and she's having to take care of her husband's land, and she doesn't want to have his family think that she's being neglectful of the land. So she's trying to get rid of this pest control problem of prairie dogs on the land. And it's out in the oh gosh, that I can't remember the name of the state that it's based in, but they're like deserts and like, not deserts, but just obviously it's where prairie dogs live. So out in the Midwest, but or maybe the West. But anyways, this was like I think 20, 40, 25, however many pages. It was definitely less than 50 pages, and it was absolutely fantastic. It's very Lovecraftian, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. So I would put this up at a new favorite. Just because it was so short, I feel like it didn't like pack a huge. Well, it did pack a little bit of a punch, but I feel like for such a short story, like it can't be above any of those other new favorites. But anywho, let's see. The next one that I read was All the Horses of Iceland by Sarah Tolmie. I absolutely adored this. This is a novella that is. You want to go in with the right expectations of All the Horses of Iceland because it is marketed as a historical fantasy. Is it historical? Yes. Is it a fantasy? Kind of. There are fantastical elements to it. But what this truly is, and to set the expectations, is if you like kind of travel log type narratives, think of Marco Polo or I don't know, other famous travel log like travelers that documented their travels. Think of that, but in a fictional format. So this follows a man as he travels from Iceland to the Mongolian area in the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages. I think it was like 700 or 800 AD. And he goes through trade stuff to get, goes through, he's a trader, he's getting materials, getting information, getting things to trade to bring back to Iceland. And this is just the story of how the Icelandic horses came to be and came to be in Iceland. And I was very surprised by this. Not because like I should have expected to like it because it's about horses, but I really just the way that Sarah Tolmie told the story very intentionally. She didn't overstay her welcome. And some might complain that, oh, you didn't get enough. Like, it's not a character driven story. Like, you don't really get the complexities or the depth of the main character who's, telling the story. But it's just, I loved it. The intentionality was just great. I loved it. Like it's so wonderful. So I'm gonna put it as a top a new favorite. Mind blowing. Yeah, I'll put it as mind blowing because it was just narrative structure wise, it was wonderful. So, all right. The next one that I read was Mor'du by Alex Phoebe. This was a buddy read with Lena from Lena's library, and it was it was I was so excited for this book because, in theory, it sounded great. It's supposed to be about dead gods, and it was just it was like this guy it was like someone thought, "Oh, I'll write a fantasy book." And then but they had never read any fantasy books. So I just I mean, it wasn't like the only thing that I liked about it was like the actual writing style had so much potential, but like the world, like I don't know. Where do I put it? Where do I put it? Where do I put it? I'll put Abomination, and I'll move that to the very end because it's at the very bottom of the freaking Abomination list. Yeah. So, okay. The next book that I read was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. So I had read Assassin's Apprentice in October, I think it was, last year, and I absolutely adored it. It was a immediate, mind-blowing 5+ star read, very emotional. I loved Robin Hobb's writing style, and I was kind of nervous to continue the series because I had such an experience, not only emotionally with that book, but also just I didn't know how she would be able to follow that up with the rest of the Farseer trilogy. But I was very glad that I wound up reading Royal Assassin because I absolutely loved it. It was not the same as Assassin's Apprentice, but it's the same writing style that Robin Hobb does. Like it was just really it was just beautiful. I loved being back with Fitz, and you meet new characters, and it's just the command and control that Robin Hobb has over every single part of her storytelling is just amazing. So it was almost mind blowing, but it was like I already knew what Assassin's Apprentice does for me. So yeah, I'm gonna put it that way. Next one that I read was Kingdom of Gods, which is the third book in the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I honestly I didn't quite understand this one. N.K. Jemisin is a genius writer. I absolutely adore her. Like she's another one that's very intentional in her storytelling. And I feel like Kingdom of Gods, which is the final book in the Inheritance trilogy, just kind of went over my head a little bit. I have a feeling I would appreciate it much more if I reread it. So, even though I think N.K. Jemisin is a god tier author, this is the one that just didn't work for me. Kingdom of Gods, I'm glad I read it, but I just didn't get it when I finished it. So, please don't come at me, people. All right, the next one I read was The Ladies of Grace Adieu by Susanna Clarke. This is a collection of short stories, some might say fairy tales, based in the same world as Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And I buddy read this with Pete from the Ponderings of Pete, and I really, really loved it. It was almost a new favorite. You really can't read it without having read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Admittedly, some of the stories kind of have gone out of my mind, but I really, really loved it. So top of glad I read it. There is one story in The Ladies of Grace Adieu that is actually based in Wall, which is part of Neil Gaiman's Stardust, I think, if I recall correctly. So if you're into that. All right, the next one that I read was Bloody Summer by Carmen Maria Machado. This was another story in that Trespass collection, and I absolutely adored it. This was amazing. This was wonderful. This was holy crap. Another one where the narrative structure is like what like it's not a traditional narrative structure at all. It is framed in a academic research paper type narrative. And this follows the story of a fictional story of a town in West Virginia that has a tiger infestation and breakout. And that's all I will say. Because I think this is another like 30 to 40 page story. And I feel like saying anything about it is going to be spoiler. But one thing I will say is that if you've read any of Carmen Maria Machado's other stories, specifically, obviously in her Body and Other Parties, Bloody Summer is very much a continuation of this kind of feminist, like, rage, not even feminist rage, but like feminist separate, and then also anger in a good way. And I absolutely ate this up. It was wonderful. It was amazing. And I think it's more here. I might switch these around after we're done here, but we'll see. All right, the next one that I read was The Fourth Island. This is another novella by Sarah Tolmie, and I really loved it. Like, again, with the intentionality of Sarah Tolmie's writing, where all the horses of Iceland looks at, like, is based on this travel from Iceland to this Mongolian area and back. The Fourth Island is very much centered around knitting, and specifically a sweater within the story. And so there is this wonderful execution of story that Sarah Tolmie weaves all these characters and time, that the past is the present, but the present is the past, and the future is the past, and it's really truly wonderful. And again, it's based on knitting, and this sweater in the story that is found, and how this sweater is dealt with by this island, this fourth island. And it's so wonderful. I'd say it was mind-blowing. Yeah, I would say it's actually even more mind-blowing than All the Horses of Iceland. Even though I technically rated All the Horses of Iceland higher, the fourth island was just like really wonderful. All right. Now, after this, I'd finally finished out Farseer Trilogy with Assassin's Quest. And I know a lot of people think Assassin's Quest is very slow and nothing happens and it's way too long, but I absolutely adored it. It was incredibly I was gripped by everything. Even the very slow moments and quiet moments I adored. I mean, it's a quest. If it's a quest, there's gonna be long-windedness. Not everything has to be very action-packed. And it's just even though there's not a lot of action in it, the tension is still there. And that's what I really, really appreciated about Assassin's Quest. And I think where would I put it? It's definitely mind-blowing. I would say actually up here. Up towards the top. I adored it. But yeah, so actually, I think there was a book that I forgot. Yes, there is a book that I forgot. So, in between All the Horses of Iceland and Mordu, I read Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. And I read this as technically a buddy read with Sarah from Sarah Reads and Yolene from Yolene Reads. And I absolutely adored it. I loved Juliette Marillier's writing style. I loved the character of Sorka. It was incredibly and unexpectedly dark. And it's a retelling, and I don't really normally like those. Uh, but I absolutely adored this. It was very just it was beautiful. Everything about it was beautiful. This is the first book in the Seven Waters series, which is technically, I guess, 6 books, but it's 2 trilogies that make up the series. But I absolutely adored it. Um, with that said, I originally was like, "Oh my god, this is mind-blowing, all-time new favorite." I would say as time has gone on, I would probably put it as just a new favorite, but not mind-blowing. Alright, and then, so with that, the reason that I realized that I forgot one is that the other book that I read after I read Assassin's Quest was Son of the Shadows, which is the second book in the Seven Waters trilogy. I I don't I genuinely don't know how the same person that wrote Daughter of the Forest wrote Son of the Shadows, because it felt like a completely different person writing it, and I found nothing of any, like, I found no positives in it. It was genuinely awful, and nothing about it, oh god, the characters were awful, the plot was pointless, and oh god, it was so bad. I hated it more than The Summer That Melted Everything, because at least The Summer That Melted Everything had some redeeming qualities, but none. Not Son of the Shadows had none. So, yeah. Next one that I read was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Matar and Max Bladstone. Bladstone? Max Blackstone. I think, yeah, that's his name. So I read this as a buddy read with Joanna, and this is a novella, and I really, really liked it. This is one of those novellas that is more experimental in nature. It's a science fiction time travel story, and it's following these two kind of opposing characters, actually, not even kind of, two actually opposing characters as they are at odds with not only one another, but the entities that they represent are at odds with one another, battling literally across time. And I just really, really adored it. Um, this was actually one of those that's the opposite, where originally I was like, oh, this is great. I really like this. But as more time has passed, I've thought more and more about it. So I would put this up here in mind blowing. The next book that I read was Children of the New World by Alexander Weinstein. I read this as a buddy read with Angela from Literature Science Alliance. This is a short story collection, and I hoped it would be in the same vein as Ted Chiang and Ken Liu and Carmen Maria Machado, with the very intentional kind of thematic storytelling in the collection. And while it wasn't as mind-blowing as those other 3 authors, but I really, really appreciated the thematic exploration and the conversation that a lot of these stories invoked and evoked between Angela and myself. So this collection is centered around climate change and climate apocalypse and really technological advances in the midst of a climate apocalypse. And I really liked it. It was a solid collection. And I'm excited to read more of Alexander Weinstein's works. So I'd put it as new, bottom of new favorite. So, yeah, bottom of new favorite. Okay, next book that I read was Seraphon the Sewanee by Zora Neale Hurston. If you know anything about me, I absolutely adore Zora Neale Hurston, and this was the final novel that myself and Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative needed to read to have read all of Zora Neale Hurston's novels. And I mean, the character work that Zora Neale Hurston puts into every single one of her characters is amazing. It's that she was able to write 4 novels with such distinct characters and make them, every single one, feel so real and so complex with their depth and heart. And even though you don't necessarily like them, like, it's, you also want, you feel for them. Oh god, I love Zora Neale Hurston. So this was definitely mind blowing. I would put it up toward. I would put it up toward here. Yeah, put it up toward here. Yeah, put it up towards there. All right, the next book that I read was Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi. This was technically a book that I read for the Brookline Booksmith Book Club, but even though I don't actually attend since it's in person now, this is a book that I was hesitant to read, but I was interested to read because I have a complicated relationship with books about memory and the fallibility of memory. And on top of that, this is about motherhood and like a relationship with them between the mother and daughter. So this is one that I was nervous about, and justifiably so. I actually had to put it down about halfway through because it was too much. It was very heavy just in regards to, like, personally, it was a struggle for me to read because of the content and this kind of volatile, but I don't know, this volatile-esque type relationship between the mother and the daughter. But I wound up finishing it, and I wound up really, really appreciating what Avni Doshi did. So what this story is it follows a woman in India who is taking care of her mother who has dementia. And they just have a really fraught relationship, and it follows them as they're dealing with their lives as they are trying to navigate not only the mother's diagnosis, but as well as just their relationship as a whole, and how the past plays into the memories of who a person is. And yeah, I really, really appreciated it. So I would put it as a new favorite, almost mind-blowing. The next book that I read was Ship of Magic, the first book in the Lifeship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb, another book in the realm of the Elderlings. And I was nervous about this one because it is not a Fitz book. And it was also, instead of being first-person narrative, it's multi-POV. And it's third person, which third person I can deal with. But multi-POV, I normally am not, like, into. But I was absolutely blown away by this one. I loved Ship of Magic. It was wonderful. It was amazing. I absolutely devoured it. It was great. There are so many characters I absolutely adored. So the fact that Robin Hobb was able to make me feel so much for all of these characters, including characters that are sentient ships. It's not a spoiler because it's in the name of the freaking trilogy. I just absolutely adored it. So definitely, what did I say, mind blowing? I would put top a new favorite. It's on the cusp of mind blowing, just because it's Robin Hobb. Robin Hobb is great. The next book that I read was Iron-Hearted Violet by Kelly Barnhill. After reading The Girl Who Drank the Moon, Stacey and I decided that we were going to read more Kelly Barnhill, and this is another middle grade. This is when I think she wrote before the Girl Who Drank the Moon, and it definitely feels much different. Not much different. What's the phrase? It definitely feels different in writing than The Girl Who Drank the Moon. It's obviously a middle grade, and it feels much more on the younger side of middle grade. But obviously, I don't read a lot of middle grade, and I'm not the target audience. But as an adult reading this book, I just thought it was okay. I didn't really I didn't really care. So yeah, I was kind of ambivalent about it. The next book that I read was Lead Feather by Stephen Graham Jones. This is one of his earlier novels, written, I think, in 2008 or 2005, one of the two. And this is not a horror novel. It is a literary novel. Oh, hi, Max. Yeah, and this is another book where it's a very interesting narrative structure. It starts off in second person point of view, and it just follows this story of this young Native American man through the eyes of everyone else around him. And the way Stephen Graham Jones weaves everything together and makes everything click. It's just, it's so great. Definitely mind-blowing. I would say it's definitely up here. I put it up here. There you go. Yeah, I'll put it there for right now. All right, the next book that I read was The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Realm of the Elderlanes, second book in the Lifeship Traders trilogy, which is within the Realm of the Elderlanes. It was great. I loved it. It was wonderful. It really expanded upon all the characters and the story as a whole, and I really, 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 really liked it. I would say it is, even though I put it as a new favorite, I will say I think The Mad Ship so far is my least favorite of all the Realm of the Elderlings books that I've read, but that is not to say that it is poor. It is Robin Hobb. It is a 5-star read, for God's sakes. So, anywho. Next book that I read was The Miner by Natsume Soseki. This is a book that I buddy read with Matt King on various Discords. And this is a stream of consciousness novel that was written in the early 1900s. And this follows a young boy who travels from Tokyo to become a miner. And it's pretty dark in regards to its content, and it was just more introspective, and it's more about the philosophical conversations that are going on rather than the actual plot or any characters. But I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. I would put it up here. Yeah, new favorite. Then I read Ship of Destiny, final book in the Lifeship Traders trilogy. And I thought this was absolutely wonderful. I think this was my favorite book of the Lifeship Traders trilogy. And the way that Robin Hobb was able to pull the entire trilogy, the plot of the trilogy together, was just absolutely fantastic. And her character work is chef's kiss. It was already fantastic and really on display with Farseer, but really it was absolutely another incredible execution of character in specifically with Paragon. I will kill for Paragon. So this was definitely mind-blowing. I would say a lot. Where would I put it? I'll put it there. All right, and then I read Evening Proposal by Hyun Hee Yin. This is a translated story collection. I thought it was okay. I don't really know how to market or describe this. It's not like, I guess it's contemporary technically, but it's a bunch of stories centered around Korean office work. And I just kind of, on one hand, I'm glad that I read it, but I'm also kind of conflicted. And I'll just go ahead and put in ambivalent and indifferent. So, and then I read the final book in the Child of the Prophecy, final book in the Seven Waters first trilogy, Child of the Prophecy. And while it was better than Son of the Shadows, it was not nearly as good as Daughter of the Forest. I felt like Juliet Marillier was able to kind of wrap up the plot that she tried to kind of pull out of Daughter of the Forest into Son of the Shadows. She's able to kind of wrap that plot up in a semi-successful way. But I still felt very conflicted about it. So, yeah, the bottom of that. All right, and then the next book that I read was A Memory Called Empire. I read this as part of the Shelf Space Book Club. Angela from the Literature Science Alliance was almost sure that I would love this book, and I did not like it. Mind you, I do have a live show discussion with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads on my channel, where apparently I have conflicts about whether I actually do like it or not. I guess part of discussing it, I thought that maybe I liked it more than I actually did, but still, I think I see its appeal for others, but it just didn't work for me. The next book that I read was a short story by Stephen Graham Jones called The Elvis Room. This is definitely horror compared to Leadfeather. It was creepy, it was unnerving. Why did I read it at night? It's more supernatural horror than anything, but I really, really enjoyed it. I would put it over here as a new favorite. And then I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I absolutely adored The Starless Sea. And I was excited but nervous to get into The Night Circus because I had read that a lot of people that like one don't like the other. And while I appreciated the writing style, I appreciated the intent of the story, it didn't blow me away like The Starless Sea did. But I would say I'm glad that I read it. Yeah, I would put it right there. And then the next book that I read was Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. I read this as part of a buddy read with my TV Tag crew, which is Angela from Literature Science Alliance, Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads, Katrina from Diary of a Book Nerd, and Ariel from a couple books with Ariel. And I apparently was the first one to finish this, so I kind of had high expectations for this one, because I know that Sarah from Sarah Reads loves this, and I don't know, I didn't realize it was a fantasy romance. 2, I didn't realize it was more YA. It was kind of like on the cusp of YA and new adult, and it feels younger, like the characters feel younger, but I liked it. Like, I liked it a lot. I'm excited to read the rest of the second book in the duology when it comes out. So I'll just go ahead and put it there. Daughter of the Moon Goddess is a retelling of the legend of Chani, or myth of Chani, which is the moon goddess. And it's, as the title implies, Daughter of the Moon Goddess. The daughter tries to save her moon goddess mother. So, yeah. All right. And then I read my first ever e-arc, which was The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This book is going to be out in August, and I absolutely adored it. Simon Jimenez, he could do no wrong. I will say that this is very experimental. It is is marketed as a fantasy novel, but it is very non-traditional. It's very, at least non-traditional in the Western sense of fantasy. It has nested narratives. It has kind of this homage to operas or theater, and it includes like almost asides or kind of chorus type break-ins of the narrative from the other parts of the nested narrative. It truly was wonderful. I read this as a buddy read with Nick from Wicked Good Books, and even though he's still working on it. I just absolutely adored it, and I think he's enjoying it too. So I would put it up here. Yeah, I'd put it. Yeah, I'd put it up here. And then I read Fool's Errand, which is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy by Robin Hobb. And it was just so great to be back with Fitz, and it was incredibly emotional, and not only in regards to like content, because Robin Hobb will destroy everyone and everything, including readers, but it was very emotional being back with Fitz, and cathartic in a way to be back with him as well. So I would put this as definitely a new favorite. Yeah. There you go. Put it right there. All right, and then the last book that I read in June was Two Travelers by Sarah Tolmie. This is a collection of 2 novellas. Again, very intentional in her storytelling. One of the novellas is based on dance, the other is based on poetry, and I really liked it. Truly wonderful, and I would put it up. I'd put it right about here or here. I'd put it here. All right. So yeah. So those are the books that I read in so far this year. So can I make this bigger? There we go. All right. I wish I had known that before, but whatever. So yeah, here is my final. Well, yeah. Let's keep it just the way it is. Here are the books that I read. So hopefully this means that I'm back on BookTube, but we shall see.